We're on. We're on. Um,
Welcome.
Welcome to the last day of the festival, and we're opening today's discussions and workshops. I have to do this. I realized.
Always come prepared.
Always. Yeah. I forgot to
Mute
the phone. Yeah. don't do like me. So we are opening the workshops and discussions of today's day, the last day of the festival, with a workshop about developing an expansion with Marcel Zvertecka.
That's
Almost.
my birth name, yes.
And
now also known as Masa
Dragomir, who happens to be married with a Romanian girl. So he, fortunately for us, he lives in Romania, so it was easy for him to come to the festival and do this workshop with me. Thank you very much for being here.
It's a pleasure.
Marcel is a developer for Mind Clash games.
Yes.
And for you have your own company and you work at your own company, or
I'm an independent developer and designer. I work in contract with a lot of companies. Currently, I'm also the chief editor of Raybox games and do a lot of rulebook editing and game development with them as well. But yeah, in the last 6-7 years, I worked a lot with Mind Clash games on various games. Voidfall, now the newest title with its expansion that is in heavy development since 2 years, I would say, with Voidfall Resurgence. Yeah.
So when I spoke with Victor Peter from Mind Clash, we were talking about Voidfall and all the things that you did for Voidfall. He said that you are quite a hero in developing Voidfall. Before we start getting into the Voidfall expansion, since when are you a board gamer?
Pretty much since I was a kid. I already started with like early board game titles like Tikal. Heroescape was one thing that I played a lot in my youth as well. And
you're not that old now, no, come on. You're still in your youth.
I know Heroescape the first printing, so that tells now that 20 years later, now they come up with the resurrection of Heroescape, which was interesting to see. It's quite some time that passed. But yeah, even early started like building my own board games in my head, in the sense of, for example, for Heroescape I built like a campaign module, or with Lego just some small board games to play with friends. Like,
so it was a small thing that you're from Austria, right?
I'm from Germany.
You're from Germany.
Yeah.
You lived in Austria at some point.
I lived in Austria for like 14 years, yes.
So in Germany, I suppose you were introduced to board games by your parents. Did your parents used to play with you when you were a child a lot?
Sadly, not quite. I mostly played on my own, later with friends. But I was always like fascinated with board games, card games, all kind of games, collectible or not, like just a fascination, like because they immerse yourself in a different world, in something that is a bit less fucked up,
less real.
real life.
Okay. I can
and not
understand
the best youth growing up, but it made me grow quite quickly in the way I am nowadays. And yeah.
And I suppose you had your own road, but when did you start getting into doing these professionally?
Professionally, I probably started around 2014, mostly as a playtester for like fantasy
Flight Games.
Fantasy Flight Games, thank you. With Descent and Descent 2nd Edition, and then from there worked through different projects. I think the real first development work I did was actually on Gloomhaven with Isaac Childress, the founder of Cephalofair Games, and from there I just got contracts here and there and made it more and more professionally. Now I'm like even fully contracted as the chief editor for Raybox Games, so I think I made my way where I want to be, and it's always also an interesting fork between being a game designer and game developer. I think I already spoke the last festival about that. They're quite different skill sets, and
For sure.
yeah, designing is a lot of creativity, while development is a lot of detail work.
Cutting,
Yes,
what
as
works,
well,
what's
yeah.
not working. So you've been working for 7 years, you said, about 7 years with Mind Clash Games. They are well known for doing these kinds of big, epic, long,
Lifestyle games.
heavy, we call them lifestyle, exactly, lifestyle games. You either like them or I just don't care about them. Have you been, because Mind Clash jumped into the scene in around 2015.
Yeah, a bit early already, I think 2012, but yeah.
It's Tricchieri on the game that really put them on the map was
Yes,
Tricchieri.
indeed.
So more, if you said you were at them for 7 years, you were there from not humble beginnings, but from mostly sort of beginnings. They are now a far bigger company than they were 7 years ago.
Yes, indeed.
How is the transition for yourself for going from small things into this craziness that Mind Clash is today?
As I'm mostly like an independent contractor and just work on project base, like I of course have a lot of contact with the main team, but like they're working on so many games at the same time. Like I know of like 6 or 7 titles that they didn't even announce yet. So they also had to grow. They had to like adapt to the situation with COVID, of course, etc. And I just really like the philosophy of game design and their approach to game design. And they always try to marry theme with mechanics very, very well. And that's why they also take so long in development process. Like if we look at Perseverance 3 and 4, which I also worked with a lot, that was almost 3.5 years.
3.5 years.
Yeah.
But that's a huge game. That's we'll talk a bit about it as a when we talk a bit about expansions. So do you like, because I want to move the discussion towards the expansion stuff. Do you let's go this route. Do you like working on expansions of other designers' games? Do you like going from something that is not yours? Because I think the first expansion that you have created was for Gloomhaven.
Yes, indeed. Gloomhaven Forgotten Circles. Like, it comes back to the split about game design and game development, where I see my own skill set very much in like seeing in an established system and knowing or having good grasp and intuition how to improve it, and where it has maybe also ways where it could be enhanced, expanded as we want to go towards, etc.
Yeah.
And for example, if you go to Perseverance 3 and 4, it already had like established mechanics due to the first episodes 1 and 2.
1 and 2, yeah.
And thus we had a lot of like discussions how we can utilize these mechanics in new ways, how we can integrate them, and we gone through a lot of development process, and it's a back and forth with the designers, and a lot of design work, especially for new board games, is on your own, and it's very, very much so out of your own creative favor. And when you come into development, it's a very collaborative process, a back and forth, and basically communication. And I enjoyed that process way, way, way more.
More than the doing it, all the things that you need to do on your own.
Yes.
When you design a
Yes.
game.
There's also, for example, with the Raybox games, we worked heavily on like the rulebook editing and like the refinement of the mechanics in the last minute iteration of Cats of Saint Mont-Michel. And now that we started working on the new game, Cats of New Orleans, which kind of works like with similar mechanics, but the whole development process now is how can we utilize the existing mechanics and create a new creative spin to make that game again a new experience, something that is not just carbon copy of each other. And that's a really interesting and fun process for me.
I see. How did the work for Voidfall is already a big game.
Yeah.
And when you have a David Turci design, you'll have a lot in the kitchen sink. Because there is always we talk about opportunity in creating an expansion. Is it now the right time? Does the expansion has enough? When did the Resurgence expansion, which is on Kickstarter right now, if I'm not wrong, perfect timing. When did was the base game developed with things that were left out, or the expansion came after with new things? And
that's a couple of questions in one. Let's start with just Voidfall and Voidfall Resurgence. Like, as Voidfall is based on an original title from Nigel,
right,
Omega Centauri, a couple of ideas from Omega Centauri, of course, were left on the cutting board that didn't make it into Voidfall. So even in the development cycle of Voidfall, there were ideas left over that Nigel and David put aside and said, this is too much for the base game. But we want to revisit them at some point. And at the same time, a base game is always about creating an interesting experience on its own. Like, it should be self-contained, self-sufficient, and an interesting experience with good onboarding that keeps the person engaged with the product in a sense. And in that way, as you said, Voidfall already came with a kitchen sink, with the cooperative mode, with a solo mode, with so many different play variations that you can probably sink already 200 hours into it. But first, Turci and Nigel, of course, had ideas they want to still bring in. Second, actual people that played it a lot keep playing and playing and playing it and wanting more. And third, also, mechanically, of course, it was constrained to this onboarding experience, to not overwhelm with things. And what we do in Resurgence is to look first also in the feedback, what are players saying. We look into what other things came from the original game that is still interesting to explore. And then third, also how again everything fits thematically integrated into each other. We developed on Resurgence for 1.5 or 1 year and 3/4 before Mindclash Games even came into the picture and said, how's the product structure? Because the game design and product structure can sometimes clash and sometimes synergize. And Mindclash Games takes a very, very big focus on trying to create a synergy.
Synergy, yeah.
So a lot of things, even as they already were very well developed and play tested and ready to print in a sense, now we come to a second development cycle where the thematic integration is extremely in the foreground, and sometimes even redesign some content to make the thematic fit. And that's something I appreciate very well with Mindclash Games, that they have the courage to say, hey, this is not where we want it yet. It's playable, it's fun, it's well balanced, but this last step is also important for us, the thematic integration.
Of the mechanisms that you're using in the expansion.
Yes.
How far can you derail from the base game?
I need to clarify what do you mean with that?
I mean, because when you make an expansion, you can transform a game, or you can integrate it into the game.
Yes. And there again the thematic fit, because Victor recently also on Board Game Geek explained it very well, that Voidfall is very much about the story, what you make out of it. Like every play of the Voidfall scenarios basically represent what happened within the war with the Voidborn. So they kind of work like parallel universes. Every scenario you play is your own story. And a lot of game mechanics actually revolve around that, with the cyclic events that you don't really play in years or something, just like in eons. Like every action you take in Voidfall in the thematic presentation takes a long, long time. And that's why we also have deterministic combat in the game, because that works well with the mechanics designed around that. So the Resurgence expansion with its 3 core modules, we have psionics, which represent the storyline. What if some of the void-corrupted humans actually develop a resistance and develop psionic powers from that? And now we're telling that story, how all the psionic awakening happening in the different houses, like even the base houses get new cards, for example. Some technologies get remodeled to integrate the psionics. We have new technologies that show the psionics. All of that under the same banner of psionics. And then, as the second module, we have the what if the Voidborn would bring big ships to the table, with dreadnoughts, with siphons, with mirages, with Voidborn destroyers. And it's a whole different, again, story that is told by that. And again, the mechanics are informed by the story they want to tell with that. And the third module that I myself designed, the incursion module, is telling what if the story is taking place not after the rifts were closed, but during, when the rifts open and the Voidborn war starts. The incursion module mechanically doesn't start with rifts on the map, but reveals them as you play, and really brings Voidborn forces into the game, make them regroup, constantly skirmish you, deploy new Voidborn, regroup, skirmish you again to create a living opponent that is very interactive with you. And every of these modules is kind of both based on what the designers wanted to achieve with that, and also about designed around like what was the feedback from players. Because ultimately expansion design is very, very much informed also about how your players receive the game. Like what they're looking for, what is missing, what they want to see. Voidborn ships, for example, the most common feedback of Voidborn is Voidfall is that the enemies kind of feel bland. They're same-ish, they're static, they're just the target to overcome.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the Voidborn ships subvert that expectation, bring something in that is way more challenging, way more interactive.
So you're talking about a modular expansion.
Yes.
Usually. I don't know if it's the same for Gloomhaven, or if it was the same experience for Gloomhaven. I don't know. I have never played Gloomhaven, so Gloomhaven for me is a total
blank slate.
Mist. I have absolutely no idea. But is it good when you're developing an expansion to think of it in a modular way, or just make sure that you create modular and you're sure that everything works well together, or you create modular? The way you're explaining it to me right now is practically every module allows you to have a different experience.
If we're going a bit broader and maybe start defining what is actually under the umbrella of an expansion, because we can talk about content expansion, we can talk about second printings, we can talk about a new edition. And they all kind of fall under like different design principles as well. Like if we look, for example, at La Granja, and La Granja, the new version, like the deluxe version. Like it brought in a lot of redesign, a modernization. It brought in new modules, and made it however you want to play it with the given content. While, for example, Forgotten Circles was more designed about telling a story about things that are hinted at within like Gloomhaven proper, but not properly like explored. Yeah. So Forgotten Circles was very much about putting the focus on the Aster race, like, and their story, because it was the most interesting to me. They're like planar beings that are trapped between worlds, and that gives a lot of possibilities to also tell stories with that. And Cassandra, the main character of Forgotten Circles, I always say Forgotten Circles is kind of like her life goal in Gloomhaven terms, like her retirement goal, and she's like designed mechanically in a way to help all others but herself. So you as a group trying to help Cassandra, well, him mechanically, she's a supportive character for all others, which is an interesting dichotomy. And the whole story of Forgotten Circles is exploring these niches, exploring like how the gloom came to be, Bastion, the character, and then what ramifications all the Aster story had in the universe. And it just was fascinating to go into these niches and explore them. Yeah.
I see you have an appreciation for what I would call storytelling in board games.
Yes, absolutely.
So, because not all expansions are, because games are so different, there's not necessarily or different expansions cater for different things. When this is a question that I right now came to my mind, when you start developing an expansion like that, do you, not necessarily you, maybe someone else does it, does someone create the whole story first and then you start building a game on top of that, or you start building a game and you develop a story with it and you try to steer right or left depending on the inspiration of the spur of the moment and so on and so forth?
Both the bottom-up and top-down design work very well. It depends on the game. It depends on what you want to achieve with the expansion. Like, if you look into Perseverance 3 and 4, it was a continuation of that story. So already mechanics were given, the story were given, and it was about expressing the story within the mechanics. While Voidfall, because we already had like content from Tercy and Nigel that exists, like the houses were drafts from the technologies that they still had on the cutting board and then filling some niches that were not explored. So all the technologies were already in place, and it was more about like slowly figuring out how to balance them, how to integrate them well with the base game, how to get everything in proper place that nothing is like too high or too low. And the thematic fit came pretty much in the end, which was interesting, where we, for example, had a sector called just like a weapons manufactory that created some combat tokens. And then Mindclash Games came in and said, like, the thematic integration of the whole expansion is the psionics. So it got renamed and redesigned into a psionic academy. And just the artwork and like the lore that is built around that pulled all the different houses that are contained within the expansion and all the different mechanics very well together, and informed where to cut, where to streamline, where to remove some mechanics and flavor them in a way that it fit with the thematics.
I see. How much of an input you get from so you work as a developer. The Mind Clash has also a sort of an in-house developing team.
Yes.
And you are practically working together, and probably most likely they have the last word in the discussion.
There was with Resurgence from Voidfall a very fortunate experience, because the in-house development team was very busy with other projects and very busy with editing rulebooks for Perseverance 3 and 4, and also for Revenant, the game that plays in the same universe.
Yeah.
I was pretty much the lead developer for Voidfall Resurgence, and had a lot of creative control and a lot of mechanical control, and we're pretty much very directly working with Tursi and Nigel and my playtesting team, and basically, what's the word, helping developers. Now only in the last phase we had way more closer interaction with Mind Clash games directly, because they finally finished their like products up and could focus on Voidfall. So the last process is like the rulebook and developing also an approachable experience. And where we now said we're actually taking more development time despite the product actually kind of being finished to do these last steps, like how people can actually easily integrate the modules, how the modules are structured within the rulebook, and that still gets us back to the drawing board in some places where we still need to put in work and still need to dig out better solutions than we came up in the first 1.5 years.
Yeah, the finishing touches that makes the whole thing round.
Yes.
So for Voidfall, you created this modular expansion. When you talk about Perseverance is it's episodes. It's you have to practically create. Perseverance gives you 2 games into one, a little bit like this, with a lot of you have similarities, but there's practically 2 games into one, or 4 games into one if you have all 4 or both games. Is it you have the same mindset when you start to create an expansion for Voidfall, or what's the difference in creating an expansion for Voidfall or creating an expansion which is practically developing into its own game? Because
it comes back to like what kind of expansion we are talking about. Like Resurgence is through and through like a content expansion, like revitalizing the game with new ways to play and new approaches, new depth. Like we're very keen on not increasing the complexity of Voidfall, because it's already a very complex game. Like once you learn it, it flows and snaps, and it shows that all the work we put in actually pays off, and it's a very satisfying experience. And of course, with an expansion, you're not trying to ruin that experience, but enrich it, give players more with them depth. Depth is in the sense of
if it already has the depth, adding more, it practically adds more weight. It goes. It's heavier to play and unapproachable. Yeah.
And that was one of the very much informed decisions we took from the beginning, that with Voidfall we're looking into ways that still keeps the complexity at the same level, while giving new ways to play and enrich like the experience in meaningful ways. While with Perseverance, I would rather call it like a series of games, similar to like Architects of the West Kingdom or Paladins of the West Kingdom, in similar games where they share mechanical identities and might even tell an overarching stories, but are way more independent as games on their own. You of course could call it an expansion. it's probably some truth to it, but episode 1, 2, 3, and 4 could completely stand on their own and be independent games and work on their own. Of course, they have shared components, shared mechanics, but on their own, they're also pretty good games. Yeah, where we could rather talk about like the Chronicle mode of Perseverance, which creates like a campaign feeling from episode 1 to 4.
Episode 4, yeah. And how cohesive must that feel for a player, and how everything flows from one game to the other, and how do you make it replayable at the same time?
Exactly. So you just don't do it once, but want to come back to it, because that's ultimately what board game design and, of course, expansion design strives for, that the player wants to come back for more, in a sense. You want to have a good onboarding experience, so the player is hooked, in a sense. Then you want to have enough strategic depth to be explored, so it doesn't get stale quickly. You want to have enough content to explore, so you can play it in different ways. And then, of course, with an expansion, you want to figure out what is people playing the game asking for, as we said in the beginning, and what you want to bring to the table yourself, what you find interesting to explore.
You talk a lot about implementing feedback. How much feedback can you implement into a game?
With Forgotten Circles, I must say I probably implemented too many. Forgotten Circles was pretty much like a sandbox of way too many ideas.
So the designer took over the developer?
Kinda a bit, yes. Isaac actually reeled me back in and took out a bit of complexity and a bit of depth. Like the original Gloomhaven always had this idea that scenarios are like uncovered step by step, room by room. But from a production and costs standpoint, it wasn't quite feasible for the first printing of Gloomhaven, because Gloomhaven and Isaac was very much an unknown entity at that time, and he worked quite a lot of loans to get his own company started, his own production started, and Gloomhaven was a quite ambitious project.
Yeah.
So again, a lot of ideas were left at the side to be explored later in maybe a sequel or maybe an expansion. Like Isaac even in the early days said back then that Gloomhaven as its own is like a completed product. And now we look back and see so many expansions and so many new games within the series that because it was so popular, it was so successful, it allowed to enrich the world, to explore more within the world. And yeah, Forgotten Circles, I was scouring all the forums, Board Game Geek, Facebook, whatever people were asking for, also what people want to see. And it was like the common tropes of, hey, why do I be able to actually see the second room, the third room, without like the physicality of it in the booklet? And that was something where we were very experimental in Forgotten Circuits and learned a lot for Frosthaven from.
Which is a whole different game
but
in itself. Shares of the DNA, but it's in winter.
A lot of a lot of improvements from in Frosthaven were actually based on
feedback.
On feedback for Forgotten Circuits, on feedback from Gloomhaven, and allowed to refine and also avoid the pitfalls that we had in Forgotten Circuits. Forgotten Circuits was always very polarizing. Some people really loved it and some people really hated it.
Probably it was too much, right? Already Gloomhaven has a lot of content when you take it out. I've seen the box. I've seen at that moment when it came, and Gloomhaven at the moment that it came out, it was a sort of a it was $1 million Kickstarter, if I'm not wrong, and it had huge content, and it had it was a Kickstarter that was $100 that gave you a game that you could probably play
300 hours easily,
something like that. Today you will not be getting that money.
Yeah, absolutely.
Unfortunately.
And that was also the point with Forgotten Circles, that people actually finished the game and wanted more.
Oh, wanted more.
Yes.
Oh, I see.
Yes, and wanted to, like, the boss fight was not satisfying enough, like the final one with the gloom and other things, and so much story was unexplored, which was a thing, and that was the most common feedback. Like, we want to have a proper boss fight, we want to have, like, exploring the rooms, we want to have a bit more puzzly elements, not just combat, more diverse gameplay within the scenarios, and that is what Forgotten Circles tried, and sometimes succeeded and sometimes failed a bit.
Being your first, that was your first published expansion, right?
Yeah, also my first design. Yes.
Your first professional design, let's call it like that. How much, when you look back, would you change?
I would probably go in with trimming tool and reduce complexity, reduce depth, still tell the same story, just as I said also earlier, make it more approachable, because I still think that Forgotten Circles is telling a very, very amazing story within the lore that Isaac created, and for that it's play worthy, and I would still like love to go back and make it compatible with the second edition of Gloomhaven. It's just up to Cephalo Fair Games and Isaac if there's any interest in that. They already like remade Cassandra the character in the Mercenary pack for the second edition. So just even creating like a PDF with the missions based on the new second edition content would be something I would be willing to do, to like streamline certain things, make it more approachable so more people can experience the story. Because I still think it was a story worth telling, and we poured a lot of work into it.
Yeah. But do you find that, well, because you grow in the business, you're able to put that developer hat with more precision, right?
Yeah, I definitely, from back there to now, learned a lot. Learned from Thursday, I learned from English Game, I learned also from other companies I worked with. Like a third example I wanted to bring today to the discussion was also like Avalon the Riven Whale, with like the Oathsworn creators, Jamie Jolly. That was also something where I worked very heavily in the development. And here it was a very interesting experience because the game and the expansion were developed side by side. Mm-hmm. Where the base game was trying to, again, have a very approachable first impression. Simple gameplay, simple mechanics. And then once you go into the asymmetric gameplay, becomes very deep and rich and worthy of many iterations of play because there's so much to explore. And Jamie Jolly already from the beginning knew like 3 or 4 expansions he wanted to do.
I see. So he designed, okay, we're going to do the base for this, and then we're going to leave everything else for.
Yes.
Which is usually the way people do it if they go on Kickstarter, because they need the extra content, because nobody will, if you don't give them extra content, they'll not support the Kickstarter.
Yeah, that's a whole different discussion as well, but yeah. With Avalon the Riven Whale, we had like the 3 base factions with like the Knights of the Round Table and the Undead. They were publicly known. And then as a major reveal during the Kickstarter was the 3rd faction, the Druids. But they were like designed and developed and play tested for ages. Uh-huh. And also later in the development process, we approached Morgan Le Fay and their faction, the Fairy Realm.
I have no idea about this game you're talking to.
It's like similar to Ankh or Blood Rage,
I see.
plays in the Arthurian legends.
In the Arthurian legends, okay.
Like with the Lady of the Lake.
I understand, okay.
With Excalibur, it's an area control game, and it has like an island board that is in the mist. You explore it step by step.
But when you usually design a game like that, you design with 4 factions. You start with 4 factions, and then you add some new factions in the.
I think it was always designed around 3 factions, and then Morgan Le Fay in the very early development process was like a faction that can be only played at 3 players or more. But over the development process, we actually said that is too unapproachable. That's too unfun. We want to create a faction that is playable at every player count. But there were also the expansion of the Mistwalkers. There is 3 more expansions that I already know of that were cut out of the first Kickstarter to be visited in the reprint.
I see. The next one. When is a difference of approach between a, let's call, more of an American style game than it is for a Euro game? Do you take a different approach? Is the design approach different? And if it is, if it's expansion or base game, is the same approach. We have
like we could do a very easy comparison between Voidfall and Voidfall Resurgence as a Euro game and Avalon the Riven Vale and their expansion. In Avalon the Riven Vale, me as a developer always tried to push also for like the parity between factions and the balance between faction, and trying to like make the game, because it's a very competitive game, like fair to the players. While Jamie Jolly was always focusing around, it's more about the storytelling, how the faction plays, and the mechanics are secondary. The balance is secondary. It's more about the Ameritrash approach of telling the right stories with the faction, telling the right stories with the mechanics. And it was always an interesting confrontational approach between me as a Eurogamer, as a soul, where I said, like, if one faction is just dominating the gameplay, then it will be unfun.
It's not fun for the others. Yes. Yeah, everybody will want to play that faction.
Yeah, exactly. So a lot of the development process was this back and forth, trying to find the right balance between the thematic Ameritrash approach and the Eurogame of fairness, and everyone has the same chances and is equally posed to win. Yeah. And that was quite a struggle. While in Voidfall, it's from the first iteration already focusing on way more how are the mechanics fair, how are the mechanics like balanced across the different factions, how do they compare, like what's their power level, and the thematic came way later, but still very much in the forefront, because Mindfish Games puts such a heavy emphasis on that.
Oh no.
Yeah. Well, when you compare it to, I would say, for example, if you look at Speakeasy,
okay.
A lot of mechanics are also informed by in which era it plays, at which time frame it plays, and Knizia has really a talent to marry these from the beginning.
Lacerda.
Lacerda. I was thinking of a different game as well. Lacerda. Knizia has that also as well in his games, but Lacerda especially takes a heavy emphasis of
on
gameplay informing theme and theme informing gameplay,
especially the theme
marrying them very well.
Yeah.
I'm not privy to the development process because I know that he's working a lot on himself as a developer and game designer.
He works with, he has usually one developer that he works with more.
Yeah, but way later in the process than in like with Mindfish Games.
Yeah.
Mindfish Games pretty early already brings to the table a development team and works with them in tandem with the designer. Well,
Vital comes up with the game with lots of it, and then he just starts. For him, playtesting is mostly for balancing, for finding loops, for finding most of it.
Just fixing the broken stuff. But
exactly.
A lot of the development process is there already done.
Yeah.
And he has like both the hats on for designer and developer.
Yeah.
While Jersey is way more like, here's the idea, make it work. Here's this idea, make it work. Here's this idea, make it work. Because he's also working on so many games in parallel, is relying on the development teams of the different games to make his ideas basically compact, well integrated and working.
Yeah, it's a different approach. It works for each designer. Works their ways. When you've been working for 1 year, 2 years on an expansion, when is it enough? When do you say, I think we are beating it to the pulp right now? When do you know to say, stop, I think now it's ready to go to print?
With Minecraft games, it's a funny experience because, like, if we look back at episode 3, for example, with Perseverance, like, it felt never enough. And even in the final version, it felt never enough because there were always refinements to be done, and it's a labor of love, and we reworked games of the mechanics of the game heavily, that in the end, kind of there was not enough time for episode 4 left in the development. Episode 4 had like just half a year or 3/4 of a year development time. But I think even with that short amount of time and pressure, we managed to find something that is really enjoyable. So answering the question is a bit hard for me. Like even with Voidfall, like mechanically, I think the expansion is very solid and it brings very, very good things into the game and stands very well. But also the product design needs to be answered, like the rulebook, etc. The approachability, and we as development and design team said it's enough. We feel confident. It's very well balanced. It's play tested to death by a lot of people. But Minecraft Games said, yeah, from a product standpoint, we still need to do some work here. So it's hard to answer, honestly. Yeah. But it's the same with game design when you just look into the base game. It's hard to answer when to stop. I think it comes back to being principled and knowing that as they're very creative processes and very labors of love, that you can pour endless amount of hours and work into it. But sometimes you just need to kick your child out of the door and bring it into the world and say, here, walk on your own and see how it goes.
I see. And probably that comes with the experience.
Yes, absolutely.
With years.
With years of experience, yeah.
Of experience.
That's also for new designers, like these pillars of design: approachability, depth of experience, the hook, and then having enough content to be able to replay it for a base game. So a very easy expansion design is also just to bring not new mechanics, not new designs, not new modules, just more of the same. Can be completely fair, valid, and bring more longevity to the game. And that's basically the simplest expansion design you can approach by just saying, hey, with the mechanics that I already have, with what is already in the game, how can I create something new that makes it a new replayable without adding anything? Just if you think Terraforming Mars, just new cards. They kind of do that every year with their seasonal promos. And if you collect the seasonal promos over time, you have like a good chunk of cards that enrich the deck and make it replayable without any expansion, without anything else. And that's, in a sense, already an expansion enough. It doesn't need more. With every expansion, you need to ask yourself, how much are new mechanics also necessary? How is like new modules necessary? And
sometimes how much is too much, because I'm thinking of Anachrony, which is a game that I enjoy, but I would cut half of it easily. I would keep the base game, I would keep Fractures of Time and a few things here and there, and everything else I don't need. It's just there. It's just there.
But if you bring up fractures of time, many people say without fractures of time, it's not as good.
It's not as good, yeah.
Fractures of time actually was something that was cut from the base game because it was too complex. But because of the years of people actually interacting with the game, they were ready to have the full experience of Anachrony with the fractures of time.
Yeah, I didn't know that. But for me, fractures of time is necessary. Is necessary. That's the only. There's a few modules here that I would add when I play, but it doesn't need a lot of. It's bigger than Voidfall or something.
Yeah,
Or
with
here or there.
resurgence, they can rival each other.
Yeah. So.
Also, if you look into the active Kickstarter of Resurgence, there are also things that you need to be aware of. Just creating the 5th agenda in Voidfall Resurgence, the psionic agendas, came with the product design question. We have this nice galactic tray inlay of the 4 agendas that you can pass around the table. How do we need to make that work with the expansion? And a lot of people in the forums were already upset. Oh, that needs to be now a separate tray that I need to give around on the table. And Mindclash Games actually had to clarify, hey, we didn't have time to mock the 3D up for it, but we're actually designing a tray that holds all 5 types of agendas.
Yes. Well,
product design is
it is important.
Step even after development process. Yeah. It's design, development, and then product structure, rulebook. And they all need to synergize and work well together. Many, for example, also criticize Voidfall for its insert, but they forget inserts are made for transport to make the game safe from the manufacturer to the table.
No. Inserts are made for making setup and tear down fast. That's the reason why you want an insert. Just for if you make an insert that makes the setup and tear down as long as it is with baggies, well, you haven't really you've spent the resources right. This is just my opinion. And I would want to finish our discussion with Vital Lacerda, and it reminded me. He says, he doesn't do expansions. He beats the game. He says, yes, I've spent 2 years of my life doing this. I don't care about the whiners on the internet asking for all of the stuff. I have done a round product. The game is good enough. It does not need expansions. What would be your take on that?
That's a very valid approach. Quantification is something where it's an interesting tightrope to walk between creating new games, new IPs, and catering also for people asking for new content within a given game. And yeah, Mindclash took the approach of, sure, why not? It works.
We'll make more money.
There's demand for it, and we still have new ideas to come up with. I think both are perfectly valid approaches, and they can stand on their own and perfectly fine.
What do you enjoy most? Working on expansions or creating a whole new game from the start?
It comes back to what I'm good at, and that's working within a given system. So I have some own designs in my pocket, and I'm working slowly on them, but
you prefer the development of
personally, delving deep into an already existing system, making it sing, removing the errors from the system, finding new ways to enrich the system is just my jam. And it's a hard pill to swallow also over the years, where I originally strived to be a game designer, but realized I'm better as a game developer.
As a developer, yeah. Marcel, I want to thank you for taking the time to do this discussion here, to this workshop here. Hope Andrei, do you have any questions in chat? Did somebody wake up this? Nobody woke up this burning on this Sunday, on this awful Sunday morning, by the way, rainy Sunday morning. You say it's autumn, not spring here in Bucharest. But yeah, I want to thank you for taking the time to come to have this workshop. I wish you all the best with the expansion, well, with your next endeavors, projects, and see you around, and hope we see you at the next edition of the festival.
Yeah, happy to.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you as well for having me.
And thank you who watched or who will watch, and see you on the next one.
Yeah, also feel free to ask questions in the comments. I can be around and answer them. It was a bit loose in direction, the discussion, but hopefully we brought you some interesting talking points.
For sure, we did. Thank you.